This is the time my mom faked her death so she didn't have to take care of me and my siblings. Yes, this girl really faked her death. So at the time, I was 5 and my little brother was 3. It started off with my mom saying that she didn't feel well and she couldn't pick me up from school, so the bus would have to take me home. Well, a few months after, she started getting picked up from our house by this black car. She said that car was picking her up because of her so-called doctor's appointments. And she wasn't able to drive herself because she was too sick. But one day, when this car came to pick her up, she never came home. Me and my little brother were sitting around for a couple days waiting for her to come home, but she never came home. And we were young, so we didn't do anything. Eventually, my aunt came over to our house and told my little brother and I that our mom had passed away and that she was cremated and they kept the ashes. So our aunt started taking care of us. Until one day I saw my aunt getting picked up by that same black car. That's when I started to get suspicious of everything and I decided to check these ashes. When I checked, it was flour. Like for part 2. This is part 2 of the time my mom faked her death so she didn't have to take care of me and my siblings. Like I said, my aunt told me that my mom had died and they cremated her and they let her keep the ashes and that she was going to start taking care of us. Me not knowing how long the cremating process actually took at the time since I was so young, I believed her. Until one day I saw my aunt getting picked up by the same black car that my mom used to get picked up by before she died. That's when I decided to check these supposed ashes and it was actually flour. So one day when my aunt got picked up by this black car, I decided to follow her. I didn't have a car. I was 5 years old, so I had to follow them by walking and hiding behind bushes. I was able to follow them up the street, and once they turned the corner, and there I saw my mom standing on the side of the street. That's when I see the car stop and I see my aunt get out and approach my mother. She tells my mom to give her money for covering for her and taking care of me and my little brother. Mom says she faked her death because my dad wasn't in our lives and she didn't want to take care of us anymore. I'm older now and I cut her off completely and I have full custody of my little brother. This is going to be a story time about how my whole school went on a manhunt for one student. Why was they looking for his ass? I'm going to get into it. Let me clarify right now that I am a victim. I do not want nobody in the comments saying, why didn't you do this? Why did you do this? It could have been me. It could have been any of us. That's why I minded my business throughout this whole thing. So I got to school a little late that day, but when I got to my class, I could tell there was a little tension in the air. I didn't know what it was, whether it was a teacher having a problem with a student or a student having a problem with another student. I just knew that the energy was off. So I'm sitting down in class minding my business per usual. The next thing I see is my teacher try to grab this one boy's phone. He immediately snatches it off his desk before she can grab it. That's when they get into this little tug-of-war type of thing. But the next thing you know, everybody sees this boy mollywop the teacher in the stomach. She falls and he runs out the classroom. Some kids started laughing and thought it was funny until the teacher wasn't waking up. This is when things get bad, like for part 2. This is going to be part 2 of the time my whole school went on a manhunt for one student. So like I said, this kid punched his teacher and ran out the classroom and the teacher wasn't waking up anymore. So as you can imagine, a room full of drained high school students who just woke up a few hours ago, we were all kind of just like looking around at each other. No one thought to, I don't know, tell somebody that this shit happened. Like, were we silent? Or were we silenced? I blame the school system for making school so early because I feel like once you get to school, your cognitive functions get out the window. So I really try hard not to feel guilty about this, and I try not to blame my other classmates for not doing anything as well. And then eventually, like 5 minutes pass, and then we're like, okay, maybe we should check if she's awake at least. That's when one of the students get up and start to check. Well, they check, and they say that she's not breathing. It obviously set something off in our brains, like this is an emergency, something needs to happen now. That's when a bunch of us ran to the office, and they called the ambulance, like for part 3. This is going to be part 3 of the time my whole school went on a manhunt for one student. We went to the office and told them how the kid punched the teacher and the teacher wasn't waking up. Immediately, a bunch of staff ran to the class to see where the teacher was and what was going on with her. I didn't personally run to the office. When I say we, I mean my classmates. So I was still in the classroom when all the staff ran in. So they told everybody to exit the classroom and everybody needed to get out of the classroom because they needed to give her some privacy and examine her. So we were all standing outside of my classroom and it was like 30 kids. The teacher that was next door to us was really close to my teacher. They would always talk in the hallways. They had their lunch periods together, their study periods together, and her door was wide open. Why didn't we go in there and tell her what happened? Honestly, like I said, we were high school students. It was really early. So she came out once she saw all of us standing outside in the hallway and she was like, what's going on? Once we told her that a kid punched the teacher and that she passed out, her face drops and she announced that the teacher was pregnant. Mind you, nobody knew this because she hadn't announced it herself yet. This is when they called the ambulance, like for part 3. Part 4 of the time my whole school went on a manhunt for one student. So now everybody knows that this teacher who is passed out on the floor and is not waking up is pregnant. That's when they decided to call the ambulance. I'm guessing they didn't call the ambulance earlier because they were waiting to see if they could try to get her to wake up. But they went ahead and put the whole school on lockdown. Nobody was allowed to leave their class, and me and my classmates went into the teacher's classroom next to us. We were sitting in the classroom for like a couple hours, and throughout these couple of hours, what we were hearing outside of the classroom was complete chaos. There was a bunch of cops, a bunch of cop radios, there was dogs. We heard a bunch of yelling and running, and that's when the announcements go off once again. And that's when they announced that they're looking for that kid and they can't find him anywhere in the school. And they're gonna let the day go back to normal, but if anybody sees him, to report it. At this point, everyone at school already knew what happened because of social media, and once they heard on the announcements that they had permission to look for the kid, lots of kids took that as this is a scavenger hunt. When I say lots of kids, I mean the whole school, like for part 5. This is going to be part 5 of the time our whole school went on a manhunt for one student. But once they announced to report the kid who punched the pregnant teacher in the stomach if we see him throughout the school day, lots of kids took that as find him and bring him to me and started hunting him down. I mean, like, as they should. So anyways, yeah, complete chaos broke out. As soon as that bell rang, child, you would be able to leave school and nobody would notice. Everybody was in the hallways. People were looking under the stairwells. They were checking in the janitor's closet, opening up doors that they shouldn't be opening. And with everybody looking for this kid, we found him pretty fast. He did what the police and police dogs couldn't do. This kid was hiding in the band room under the band instructor's desk. They found him and arrested him on school property. We got word that that teacher did in fact lose her baby, but she was okay and she was alive, but she chose not to work at that school again. But she never came back, and I don't know, I think that kid is still in prison. What's one really bad thing you did as a child that you kept secret for your entire life and didn't tell nobody? I'll go first. I got a lot of stories like this, but this is just one of them. So my mama used to put me in daycare, and in my daycare we used to do field trips, and we went to the YMCA. So while we were in the pool, this one white kid comes up to me. He asked me, like, why are you black? And I was kind of embarrassed, but I wasn't mad at the kid. I was more embarrassed than I was mad. And I told him that my parents painted me every single day. And I was thinking back at the time when I scraped my knee and the skin came off and there was like no blood. It was just bone. But I didn't know that it was bone. I thought that I was just white underneath. So I was like, it's true, like I can peel my skin off and prove it. When I did that, I peeled skin off my finger and it was a lot of skin and I started bleeding really bad. So the water started getting red and the daycare people tried to get everybody out the water like there was something going on. And then once everybody was out of the water, one of the daycare people go, I'm so sorry, everybody. I lost my tampon. I need to find it. Okay, so what happened was pretty self-explanatory, but I can make a part 2 if you guys want. So this is part 2 of the really bad thing that I did as a child and kept secret. So my daycare instructor, or whatever you call them, basically said that she had lost her tampon in the water. And I'm guessing she said that because she was on her period and she had a tampon in and the water started turning red, and that's the only reason that she could think of. But like they started checking all the kids and making sure that all the kids were okay and stuff. And when they came up to me and asked me if I was good, I was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And so they were looking in the water for like an hour, but there was no tampon. Like they could not find the tampon. Like that one white kid, he was not part of the daycare. Like he wasn't one of the daycare kids. So they evacuated everybody out the pool. Like nobody was allowed in there. And like we all got back on the bus and we went back to the daycare, and the daycare instructor who thought she had lost her tampon literally talked to all of us and was like, things like this can happen as a woman, and when you get older, you'll understand. But baby, I stayed mute. Ain't nobody know. One person knows, but hopefully she don't see this on her For You page.